Okay, I'd like to introduce Reverend Issan Koyama for today's talk. He's been part of Sanshin for years. I know him from the time he was here for the 2018 Ango. I was Shuso at that time, head priest being trained. And he was a source of humor, knowledge, and an example of a commitment to practice I was glad to have around. So to extend on this a little bit, Reverend Koyama is a Buddhist priest and disciple of Shohaku Okamura Roshi. Issan is originally from Japan, is a former journalist and corporate governmental organization consultant, Issan started to incorporate Buddhist practice into his work in the 1980s and began offering meditation instructions to people with HIV/AIDS in 1991, while working as a full-time hospice spiritual counselor, clinical chaplain in USA. Issan also co-financed and established a medical facility in Japan in 2004 that hosted medical clinics and residences for geriatric palliative patients. He has attended over 1,000 deaths through his work on end-of-life care and has been featured in both America and Japanese mainstream media, such as New York Times and Asahi Shimbun, and in StoryCorps books callings. Currently, Issan focuses on Dogen study, dividing his time between USA and Japan. Welcome, Issan.
Thank you very much. Oh, I really miss you guys. What happened was I was in Japan for quite some time, and I was supposed to come back to the United States at the end of March, and then immediately coming to Sanshin to stay another practice period as of April. Well, what happened was because of this COVID-19 situation, at the beginning of March, people in Japan started to tell me I really need to go back to the United States as soon as possible before the travel restrictions starts to be happening, which actually did happen, and it's still happening. So I only had 3 days in between changing my flight schedule and leaving Tokyo to come back to New York. And then right now I'm basically not able to travel. So I'm stuck in New York City for all these months. But what happened was before I left, wonderful people in this temple called the Myokoji, where I practice in Japan, gave me so many gifts, and particularly 3 important gifts that I was supposed to bring physically to Sanshinji as a gift to Sanshinji. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and those gifts are basically one of the kind. So I wasn't feeling really comfortable to ship this by whatever it is, the method is. And then about a couple of months ago, it became quite clear to me that I will not be able to travel to Sanshinji physically, bringing this by myself. So I asked Hojo-san, Okumura Roshi, and Yuko-san to be on Zoom, and I presented it on Zoom. I wanted to do that to you, Sangha members today. And so that's why this is happening now. So before I explain what these are, let me just briefly, so that I think I know most of you, but maybe some of you haven't met me before. So I'll just explain the context of what these are and why I am carrying this to Sanshinji and how, etc., etc. So what happened was I was born in Japan and raised in Japan and graduated in university in Japan. And then right after my graduation, my first job after school was in France. So I went to France, and then that was 1980. And then in 1983, I was transferred to the headquarters of the corporate I was working for. It was an American-owned international media company. And then I was transferred to New York City. This is 1983. And in 1983, my office was in Greenwich Village. And the area of my work, meaning the type of the news I was supposed to collect and send, was in the area of arts and entertainment and lifestyle and fashion. And this is downtown Manhattan. So if you have lived long enough, you know this became the epicenter of this global pandemic of HIV/AIDS. So soon after, I started to see a whole bunch of my colleagues and the people I'm supposed to interview, supposed to feature, started to get sick and die. That actually directly brought my attention to Buddhist teaching. And then all these years, because of the type of the work I do, I've been always traveling between US and Japan and US, Japan. Many of the years, I spend at least 2 to 3 months each year in Japan. So I was starting to look for some resources of the teaching, and then I started to encounter, of course, Dogen's teaching. But it was kind of confusing because the Dogen teaching is, the situation is almost the opposite. The issue we have here is a lack of information. Issue they have there is too much information. Uchiyama Roshi, Hojo-san's teacher, I've been transcribing all of his recordings right now, so that someday somebody help me to translate those. But anyway, very often he uses this word. This is from the recording from 1980s and 90s, saying there are too many books written on Dogen, and so much so, in his very ironical, humorous way, he says it looks like a trash thrown out on the floor. So you have to use the broom to sweep them away and throw them out. So much so, there was so much, interest in Dogen going on. But for me, this is pre-internet era. It was very difficult for me to find what is what and which is which. Lucky thing happened around the millennium. This is about 20 years ago. I was just studying how to operate hospice organization with Zen Hospice Project. I believe some of you are quite familiar with this, but this is the nation's first, let's say, Buddhist hospice organization, stemmed out from San Francisco Zen Center. So it was hosted by, at that time, Blanche Hartman was the head of the San Francisco Zen Center. And I stayed in San Francisco Zen Center. And the office of Zen Hospice Project was across the intersection of Laguna Street and Honda Street. And Laguna and Page Street. Laguna Honda is the name of the hospital. Sorry. And so I go to morning zazen, and during some hours, work hours, I'm allowed to go across the intersection and go to the office. And then I start to study how you run hospice project. And coincidentally, that was exactly the time Okumura Roshi moved his office from Los Angeles to San Francisco. So there was this friend of mine who was a nun, a Japanese nun, whose name is Myoju. She's somebody who studied and trained in Daijoji. Daijoji is one of the very, very important temple, and you probably hear the name very often through Dogen study. But anyway, she was married to an American man who lived in Bay Area. So she was also doing back and forth and back and forth. One day I meet up with her and she says, Issan, you really have to come to Sokoji and meet this man. His name is Shohaku Okumura. So I said, oh, I think I've heard about his name. He's the direct lineage of Sawaki and Uchiyama, right? She said, yes. And he's now offering Dogen class every Sunday in the basement. There's a conference room in the basement in Sokoji. Sokoji is the Japanese temple, which was built in originally like 1920s at the request of Japanese immigrants to America. Japanese Americans wanted the temple. So it's on the top of the hill of Japantown in San Francisco. So one Sunday, I went to this Shohaku Okumura's Dogen class. Sunday afternoon. It was a quite large, lecture room, and he had this very famous. It wasn't the white erase board and black marker then. It was a black board with a white chalk, and then he's just like he is right now, very, very, calmly, word by word, sentence by sentence, he gives very, very clarifying explanation. And then there are only four of us who came as a group in the lecture, to the lecture, and there were three homeless people sleeping and having sandwich during the time of lecture. But regardless, Hojo-san is always very calm and very clear, etc. I was just so impressed. And I think that was the time I really started to see, oh, I can actually read Dogen with his guidance. So ever since then, I've been following his teaching. And about a few years ago, I was finally able to reduce my workload. So I've been spending basically 3 months practice period with the Sanshin. I think I started in the same year Hoko-san became vice abbot. So, but what happened is, I still keep going back to Japan and going back and forth and back and forth. And every time I go to Japan now, I now have access to Okumura Roshi directly. So I ask him where I should go. So 3 summers ago, I was in Japan for a couple of months for some family business. And I sent an email to Hojo-san, Okumura Roshi, asking, well, I went to Daijoji, I went for the Zenkai, I went to this place for session. Is there any other place you recommend me to go see? And then he says, well, it's kind of far, but if you have a chance and if you have time, there's a place called Myokoji. Myokoji spells as Myoko, and G is a prefix, postfix as a temple, Myokoji. I don't know how much you are familiar with the Japanese geography, but Japan is an island nation, consists of a little over 300 little islands. But out of that island, there are 4 large islands, and it's stretched from northern side is like a Siberia, southern side is semi-tropical. And out of those 4 main islands, it's the southern portion. It's called Kyushu Island. So this Myokoji is in Kyushu. It was a little far from where I was at that time, but I thought, well, this is really worthwhile to give it a try. And I took some time off and I went all the way to Kyushu. And then I discovered this is situated in the middle of, Dogen's footsteps. And also it is headed by Sawaki Roshi's last remaining active disciple, whose name is Honda Roshi. If you do have this book, this wonderful commentary on Bendowa, Wholehearted Way, translated by Okumura Roshi and Taigen-san in Chicago, in page 69, Uchiyama Roshi explains how Honda Roshi came as a teenager to Antaiji many years ago. Honda Roshi is now 84 years old. So he's basically last remaining clan of a direct disciple of Sawaki Roshi. And then they were so happy to have somebody from Sanshinji coming over. I really didn't know this because, Okumura Roshi, very subtle, and he never really, says anything that sounds even slightly remotely self-promotional. So sometimes it's kind of hard to find out what exactly he's telling us. But I found out Honda Roshi is a major fan of what's going on with the Dogen study in the United States and has been supporting morally and also financially Okumura Roshi's activity and this mission to the United States for a long time. And also, this is also the hub in Kyushu for Dogen study. And many of those Dogen family come along. And also Sawaki Roshi, out of all these years of teaching, he basically traveled around all the time. But out of all these years, almost 20 years of his teaching career, he stayed in Kyushu in the neighborhood of Myokoji. And Myokoji is where Sawaki Roshi often came over to conduct sesshin and also genzoe. And you probably know this story very well, but Sawaki Roshi is somebody who barely received elementary school education because of the family situation he was raised up. But by the time he was like 40 and 50 years old, he was the nation's leading Dogen teacher. And Komazawa University, which is Soto School's university, had to ask him to become an honorary professor. And then he rejected it for a long time, but finally he said, with one condition: you build Zendo in the university, and Zazen, you make Zazen as a mandatory freshman curriculum. And if that's the case, I will come to teach at Komazawa University. So since then, Komazawa University, all of those students, including the students who are not with the Buddhist study, has to go through Zazen training almost. But anyway, that conversation actually took place in Myokoji. And so I was really happy to discover it, and they were really happy to have me come over. So they gave me a visa. Oh, by the way, I gave up my Japanese nationality 4 years ago, and about 5 years ago. So I needed a visa to stay on in Japan more than 3 months, but they issued me a visa, so I was able to stay long, and that's how this whole thing about the Dogen-related gifts handed to me, so that I can bring it to Sanshinji, because they see Sanshinji is the really important connecting point for global Dogen teaching, not only with the connection between Japanese Dogen study, but also because of the Sanshinji's activity, the Dogen study really spread through Europe as well, from Sweden to Italy, all over the places. So the first thing I like to show you today is, if you're not familiar with what the Kesa is, and you have never really saw Kesa, you feel, what the hell is that? But for us, this is an amazing thing, and it's real. It's a very tiny little thing, and so I folded into clear plastic. This is, can you see? This is a real thread from Dogen's own Kesa. Isn't that amazing? Kesa is a kashiya. It's the outer robe we are wearing. This is Kesa. You probably know this story, but it's an amazing story. Thank you. I see now. Wow, picture. Yeah, it was really wow for me. What happened was Dogen, I think it was about, well, maybe Hojo-san will probably talk about this some other time in much more clearer information. But I think it was about 5 or 6 years before his passing. He had a really wonderful guests coming over from Kyoto. This is a couple, man and woman couple, lay practitioner who practiced with the Dogen in Kyoto. And they were very skillful converter for fabric. So they made a roll of fabric. I think it is basically a form of linen, and then brought all the way from Kyoto to Eiheiji, where Dogen had established by that time, and brought the roll of fabric. And Dogen was so happy, of course, seeing these people traveling all the way. From Kyoto to Eiheiji, Eiheiji is, of course, our main monastery in Japan, which was established by Dogen himself. Right now, it's an easy trip. You take a train and you take a bus and you walk just a little bit. But this is beyond several mountain ranges. So at that time, we are talking about late 40s, 1240s. So it's a quite, trip on foot. And then, so therefore he was very, very happy to see this couple. And at the same time, he was very happy to receive this newly woven fabric. So he cut it by himself and put it together with his own hands and sewed his own kesa. It's interestingly 25 panels, 25 panels. And so I had known this story for a long time and I always wanted to see it. What happened was this Dogen's kesa was given to his first disciple, Ejo, and Ejo gives to Gikai, and Gikai gives to Keizan, and Keizan gives to this person I really actually didn't know until I researched this, Sotetsu. And then Sotetsu had a disciple called Daichi. Daichi Senji is a very famous guy because what happened was he was a very good poet. So therefore he wrote lots of poems, Dharma poems, and Sawaki Roshi was a big fan of these poems. So he often utilized these poems in his talks, and he has this book about Daichi Zenji's poems as well. But anyway, so Daichi Roshi's time was, he was born in 1290 and he died 1366. So if you're familiar with the history of Japan, that's a very traumatic time. There are lots of things going on and it was not safe for him to stay in the area of Kyoto or Eiheiji. So Daichi decided to come back to where he was, and he's originally from Kyushu Island. So he came together with a robe and then brought it over to the temple that was established by his supporters. And this temple is called Kofukuji, K-O-F-U-K-U-G, Kofukuji. And so Kofukuji kept this robe for a long time, kesa long time, to the point that, Japan is very vulnerable to climate change, particularly with the typhoons and earthquakes and landslides and water flood and etc., etc. And also Kyushu is always the target of typhoons. So some time ago, Kofukuji decided it is safer if a museum keeps it. So right now, it was given to Kumamoto Prefectural Museum of Art and tucked away, so it's not really exhibited. So what happened was I asked Honda Roshi, I really needed to see it before I come back. And so they made a special arrangement. And of course, this is within Dogen family, so it's kind of easy. And also, if you use the name of Okumura Roshi, or Sawaki Roshi, or Honda Roshi, it's almost like, safe conduct to go to, yes, it opens the door. It's almost like a guest list on a very popular nightclub. You have to line up all the time, but if you use the name, the door opens. So therefore, Honda Roshi made it possible for me to go to Kofukuji, and Kofukuji gave me the safe conduct to go to the museum. And the museum was waiting, having this curator, series of curators, actually 3 curators waiting for us to come in. And they brought this robe to us, and I was able to see it so close, so that you can actually examine Dogen's stitches. And I felt, oh, actually, his stitch is not that good. That was my first impression. But it was a really amazing experience. And of course, I'm not supposed to touch it, but I touched it. And then Kofukuji told me the negotiation between Kofukuji and this museum is that once every 4 years, only 3 days, this robe comes back to Kofukuji. And during those 3 days out of 4 years, they have some sort of ceremony, and it opens up to small members of Dankas and Dogen family. So some years ago, many years ago, Myokoji's Godo. Godo is the name of a supervisory position. Godo, if it is a corporate, it's almost like a chief executive operator, CEO. So he's actually the one who does hands-on teaching and instruction. And his name is Kimura Roshi, Kimura Ikko-san. And Kimura Roshi was a very young man of his 30-something years old. Oh, interestingly, Dogen family includes lots of people who are not temple owner's son. You probably know this, but the main issue in Japanese Buddhism, stagnation of Japanese Buddhism right now is almost 80% of the new monks, temple owners' sons, just to succeed the temple. But many people in Dogen family are not like that. It's just like us, who somehow, because of what happened in the life, we become interested in Buddhism and become out of our own wish and will, we change our lifestyle. So Ikko-san, Kimura Ikko-san was also a jazz musician. And then around 30 years old, he decided to leave his job and then became a monk under the supervision of Honda Roshi. So Honda Roshi was still a young, very active teacher. And then Kimura Roshi is my age, so therefore he's 65 years old now. So we are talking about 30-something years ago. And then he was brought to Kofukuji on those 4-day special days out of 3 days out of 4 years. And then at that time, they can open Dogen's kesa out, and if you like, you can wear it. So you can really feel it. So Kimura-san was doing that with a really, wow. And then after he brought it back to the abbot of Kofukuji, he recognized, oh, there's a little thread fell on the floor. And then he picked up and tried to give it back to the abbot, and he said, no, it's okay, keep it. So for 30-something years, Godo-san, Kimura Roshi, has been keeping this in his wallet. And then when I left, he said, you know what, Issan, just hold it. I have something to give it to you, and I want you to give it to Okumura Roshi. And then he gave it to me saying, well, it's probably the best, and it also symbolizes Dogen teaching, crossed the ocean and went to the United States. So it should be kept in Sanshinji. So someday, I know this is a dirty film right now, but someday when all of this is behind us, I'll travel to you with this, and I'll ask Okumura Roshi his own preference, and I'll have it framed. So eventually this is going to be in Sanshinji. It's almost like a symbol for me, not just right now crossing the ocean, etc., but this is quite amazing. Like hundreds of years of, well, perseverance and all these challenges, and we went through, and we are still here. Next thing, well, you have to stop me when I go on and on and on, because these are very exciting gifts. I could go on and on and on. So another thing about Myokoji, particularly as a hub of Dogen teaching. Oh, just so everyone is on the same page, this Dogen teaching had been kind of tucked away for centuries after Dogen died, because of this, historic events and very chaotic time came, etc. And it was only 18th century to 19th century, Dogen's teaching was rediscovered. But we had to wait until someone very skillful to be able to unwrap these very difficult teachings, and then it can be delivered to the regular folks like us much clearer way. So therefore, there are two very important person appears in 18th century. There's someone whose name is Menzan, and the Menzan left lots of commentaries which we still rely on. Menzan is also from the neighborhood of Myokoji. So there are lots of footsteps I went to visit around for Menzan. And after Menzan, we have to wait until mid to end of 19th century. And there was this wonderful man whose name is Nishiari Bokusan. Nishiari Bokusan is the one who actually started Genzoe and started to give a very detailed explanation of Shobo Genzo, Dogen's teaching. This is another gift I received. This is not the one I was going to show. This is really heavy. This is an entire volume of Nishiari Bokusan's teaching on Shobo Genzo, which with some supports with several other people, I'm going to start to try to translate. Someday it's going to be all yours. But Hojo-san told me, Issan, you really have to regard this is a 30 years project. So therefore, I don't think I will see the end of the project. So I will need some younger folks to come in, being interested in helping me to translate this. But anyway, Nishiari Bokusan started Genzoe. And under Nishiari Bokusan, there are three very, very influential, very, very skillful teachers appeared. And this is now 20th century. And one of them is Sawaki Roshi, our direct lineage grandfather. And Sawaki Roshi has a wonderful disciple called Uchiyama Roshi. Uchiyama Roshi had a wonderful disciple called Shohako Kumura. And therefore, Dogen teaching was delivered to the United States and then spread to Europe as well. And the interesting thing is other two, Kishizawa Ian Roshi was also a very important person. He also left 95 volume of commentary of Shobo Genzo. And his disciple is a very well-known man among Americans. His name is Suzuki Shunryu, who eventually came to San Francisco, opened the San Francisco Zen Center. And then another person is Hashimoto Eko. And Hashimoto Eko had a wonderful student who eventually came to Minnesota and opened the Minnesota Zen Center. So we are all same family under the same group of people. And so therefore, Myokoji is the hub of not only Dogen, but also Sawaki, Uchiyama line. And many, probably you have read Homeless Kodo's book. And, you know, with Sawaki Roshi and Uchiyama Roshi, a whole bunch of younger folks started to come and join Zazen. It was a really height of this younger generation movement. And then among them, there are quite a few people who kept on staying with Zazen, even though they're lay people. And one of them, who used to go to session after session at Antaiji in Kyoto, eventually came back to Kyushu in the neighborhood of Myokoji, became a professor. He's actually the dean of law school of National University of Kyushu. His name is Nishimura, Professor Nishimura. Professor Nishimura is basically every single month. In Myokoji, we have session every month and Genzoe every month. And for every month, you know, several lay people keep joining us. And Professor Nishimura was one of them. So when he heard that I am coming back to the United States, one day he came to visit me and brought me this. This is a limited version of a memorial plaque. It's almost like a decoration plate, but it is made by Uchiyama Roshi for the 7th year anniversary of Sawaki Roshi's passing. I believe Sawaki Roshi died in 1965. And then after Sawaki Roshi died, Uchiyama Roshi officially became the abbot of Antaiji. So 7th year, you know, in a Buddhist counting, the year you die is supposed to be the first year. So we are basically talking about 6 years. So obviously this is early 70s. And Uchiyama Roshi was a very excellent brush worker. So therefore he wrote that very famous scarecrow waka poem Dogen wrote. You probably have heard about this scarecrow poem during the Genzoe. Sometimes Okumura Roshi utilizes this poem. And this drawing is also done by Uchiyama Roshi. And it's made into a plate. And so they gave these limited numbers of the plate to the frequent participants of Sesshin and Genzoe who remembers Sawaki Roshi and Uchiyama Roshi. So Nishimura-san, Professor Nishimura came with this and he says, Professor Nishimura is also close to 85 years old. And so therefore he says, at this age, but it's quite amazing. I sat through a couple of sessions right next to him, and he's quite amazing in Zazen. But anyway, he said at his age, he really has to think about cleaning up his stuff so that he doesn't have to, leave too many things for the, after he departs. Unfortunately, he says he has two sons, but none of them are interested in what he's interested in. So therefore, it would be a shame if it will be left to them, and I want you to keep it and bring it to Sanshinji. So, so some of you who have bought the first edition of Homeless Kodo, you probably remember this drawing because Hojo-san Okumura Roshi actually received electric version of this drawing and used it as a cover of original Homeless Kodo. I know several years ago, Homeless Kodo was revised and now it has a very beautiful glossy cover. It's a picture now, but now this was the originally used illustration. So eventually, again, when I come to Sanshinji physically, I'll bring it physically and present it to you. And then I'll try to make it into a frame according to your preference. I'm very cautious about this, handling this, so hold on a moment, please. Oh, by the way, this scarecrow waka, you might know about this, but let me read it in Japanese first, just like Okumura Roshi always does. 守るとも思わずながら小山田のいたずらならぬかかしなりけり。This kakashi, just like Shobo Genzo tsuki, tsuki colloquially meaning moon, but in Shobo Genzo, Dogen playfully utilizes different Chinese character, pronounces exactly as tsuki, but means something else. So therefore, this kakashi scarecrow usually writes differently, but he uses this Chinese character, kakashi. The original I just showed it to you is a grass style. It's really not very easy to read, but this kakashi can be read as priest from the capital, which means Dogen. Dogen used to be in Kyoto and then goes to Echizen and established this Eiheiji in the middle of the mountain. But he's talking about himself. And so it's a pan, of course. I don't think it was intended in the way because they are not predicting this. But this poem is almost like presented to us going through the challenge of pandemic. So Mamoru Tomo, so Scarecrow doesn't have any wish or volition, but he just stands or sits there and he protects the field, yes? So just like that, without wishing to be enlightened, without wanting this and without wanting that, not pushing, not putting, you just keep on going, clarifying your true self, and then going through moment by moment in each action every day. So it is a pan, symbolized by Kakashi, scarecrow. So this is very interesting that it just so happened it was given to us in the time of the challenge. So the last one I wanted to show you, this is also a very interesting one. You know, I took a little while to open this, but this is the last handwritten letter Uchiyama Roshi wrote to send it to new location of Antaiji. Um, just so you know about this, Antaiji is the place where, of course, Okumura Roshi met Uchiyama Roshi. And this is where all these, Dogen study revival actually started to take place. But Antaiji, Uchiyama Roshi, after Sawaki Roshi's passing, Uchiyama Roshi took over the chair. And then Uchiyama Roshi, as you probably know, had lived his entire life basically with struggling with tuberculosis. And so he was very physically weak. And at the 1975, he decided to retire and step down from the position of the head of the Antaiji. And after that, I think it just took a year or two, Antaiji was no longer able to function as a site is in the middle of a newly developing industrial area, and there was lots of noise around. So together with all other reasons, and they decided to move to a quite remote area from a almost central area of Kyoto to northern tip of Hyogo Prefecture. So this is quite far from Kyoto. So therefore, what happened was, in Uchiyama Roshi's time, there were lots of people started to come. And according to what I read in this letter, towards the end, in every time they have a session, there are about 60 participants. And Antaiji is a tiny little house, so it must have been packed. They must have been really doing zazen like knee to knee, practically. As a matter of fact, I have heard the story about how Yuko-san met Hojo-san for the first time. And it was the day Yuko-san went to Antaiji, and without actually knowing where to enter from, because it's a house, it's not a temple, and you don't know where the door is. So therefore, she started to open the shoji screen, which is like a window. And then inside, there was a small room, and a bunch of monks were sitting zazen, completely packed. And then among them, there was Hojo-san. And I think Hojo-san's zazen gave her a big impact, I think, because she remembers that moment. So anyway, so much so, it was really crowded. And out of the 60 people, interestingly, 30, almost half of them were non-Japanese people who were seeking for Dogen's teaching, went all the over to Kyoto from all over the world. So it was a very active place. But after moving to another prefecture, particularly remote area, they started to lose the numbers of the participants. And at the point of this letter written, I believe this is near the end of Uchiyama Roshi's life. Uchiyama Roshi died in 1998. So it kind of in sync with the name it is addressed to. He says, the letter starts with, there's a time of challenge for you guys, because a number of the participants, a number of the people who live in Antaiji now dropped to 4. And then he talks about, when he took over Antaiji, there was actually nobody. And then slowly one person comes and another person comes. And he analyzes this as a season. By the way, it's a really, his handwriting shows his personality. I really think so. It's very meticulous, and his tone is very gentle and kind, very caring, but at the same time, he's very clear. And he talks about, he also felt it was a time of winter, particularly after Sawaki Roshi dies, he has to take over the temple, etc., etc. And after Sawaki Roshi leaves, many of those people who are following Sawaki Roshi leaves, doesn't come to Antaiji anymore because it is not Sawaki Roshi's Antaiji. But he really felt, just like planned everything in winter. This is the time for preparation. This is the time, if it is a plant, you really have to plant it really well, and you have to nourish it, and you have to start to integrate with the root going deeper and wider. So this is the time. And then slowly he started to see the change of the season of Antaiji. And then one person starts to come, excuse me, another person comes, etc., etc. And eventually Antaiji becomes packed with 60 people for every session. So he's talking about time of challenge. What do you need to do? And he's basically saying time of challenge, not only when you are challenged, but also that he also talks about, it's a long letter, and also it has a quotation from several chapters of Shobo Genzo. But what I'm getting at from here is that when everyone else in the whole society is just running around chaotically, the best contribution you can do is you are just so deeply integrated and rooted into shikantaza. You have to sit through, particularly this time, so that the center of this running around is stable. So that's his suggestion and advice to this now newly opened, but having problem, Antaiji. So as you know, Antaiji now is a very famous popular place. But I think what I'm personally getting from this letter is that how we carry on each day, each moment of each day, rooted very deeply, sitting through shikantaza. So it's almost as if Honda Roshi intended, he gave it to me as if he was predicting what will be coming after March. Interesting thing is Professor Nishimura also said, this is going to go on. This is going to be a very difficult time for all of us. Because it's just not only that we can't go outside freely, etc., but it will give a significant challenge to economy and society itself. So therefore, this will really challenges us and rethink how we carry out our practice in this society. Come to think about that, hearing that in March, at the beginning of March from Professor Nishimura, was almost like a prediction. This was a very interesting timing that I received, and I intended to bring these to you to Sanshinji right away, but so far it's stuck with me. But sooner than later, I hope I can bring this to you, and maybe Hoko and Doju will help me to translate this letter as well. With Okumura Roshi's support, because a whole bunch of them is a quotation from a fascicle from Shobo Genzo as well. But I really feel, gentle, caring voice from Uchiyama Roshi, not only to then Antaiji, but to us, Sanshinji as well. So those are the gifts I wanted to show. And I really, really look forward to the day I can just physically bring them to you too. Thank you. So, Hoshin, I think we have a time for sharing. Yes?
Yes, we do. Does anybody have questions for, yes, Kosan, I knew it.
Well, there's so much there, Issan, that I want to follow up on. I think you and I perhaps need to have a conversation outside of this meeting.
Yes.
Because there's just a lot I'd like to follow up on. So I'll throw one question out just for now so that we can have a conversation. I'm really interested in this whole connection with Menzan and the whole reform thing. the whole Soto Zen reform thing. So I wonder if you can say a little bit more about the connections that you see between the things that Menzan was doing and the sort of Dogen studies revival, because these things are tied together, and what that means for our specific Dharma family. I mean, I know you could speak for 3 more hours about that, but maybe there's 2 or 3 additional key things you'd like to share.
You know, what comes to me right away is that, I'm part American, part Japanese, right? And nationality-wise, I'm American. So for a very long time, it was very important for me to study Buddhism in English so that I can also, communicate with people here as well. And my biggest issue was the lack of translation, lack of resource. Particularly, it is not possible to read not only Dogen, but also essential Buddhist texts such as Prajna Paramita text and Lotus Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra, without clear commentary. And with the commentary, I mean not just impressionistic kind of opinion-based I feel this way type of books, but it is traditionally authenticated word by word, sentence by sentence explanation of what these important texts are actually teaching. So by meeting Okumura Roshi, I really finally find the right channel to go where to rely on what books and etc. etc. So interesting thing is I actually didn't know there's lines of famous commentaries which even now all of us, including Okumura Roshi, relies on, starting from Senne all the way to Menzan and all the way to Nishari. And those are the ones we really need to have them translate. And in Japan, but I don't think it's the case of all the temples, but because Myokoji is basically a hub of Dogen study in Kyushu era, their library carries incredible things, which I never will be able to make an access to from here, because it's not sold on Amazon or eBay. I found it was very interesting when I mentioned about I like to bring something about Menzan. And then, Honda Roshi says, oh, but didn't you see a whole bunch of books of Menzan in the library? And he goes into the library, he takes me to the library, oh, there, look at this. And then, you know what? It's original. So therefore, it's Edo period language. I somehow can figure this out. And also it utilizes katakana, so I can read it, but it's not really contemporarized. So therefore, it is really for, among us who's been studying Dogen in Japanese in Japan. So therefore, even in Japan, we have lots of things to do because we really have to contemporize those language so that regular readers can really make an access. So at the end, what I did was I asked everybody around, is there anything I can bring back to the United States? And possibly with the help with Dogen Institutes and Sanshin connection, maybe we can embark on the translation project. So I brought pretty interesting things. Actually, I couldn't bring everything. So I'm planning to go back again in January for a couple of months, and I'll bring more. But for instance, well, I have Keiteki by Nishihari Bokusan, and I also, the most current one, there are 2 Dogen teachers who's also Okumura Roshi's friends, teaching Genzoe in Eiheiji. And then I got hold of somebody who has been recording that on his own in Eiheiji. He's one of the supervisory position who also takes supervisory position in Myokoji. Then he gave me almost nearly 100 hours of recording of those. So we have older ones from Menzan to all the way to most current one, like last summer. So we have lots of things we can enjoy doing with. So that's the thing that comes to me right away. But of course, it's a very, long process. First of all, I have to, bring it from a recording to written version so that I can bring it to you. So written language is easier to translate, etc., etc. So yes, as Okumura Roshi himself says, it's going to be a 30-year project, and I don't know how much we can do. Oh, interesting thing. Many of them are in recording, but Uchiyama Roshi's recording is a set of CDs. This also includes entire very detailed explanation of Hachidai Ningaku, the last fascicle of Shobo Genzo. So, but as you see, I haven't even unwrapped it yet. There are too many to do it all by myself in New York. I have to come to Sanshin to receive your support. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment or a question?
Oh, may I tell you a little more about this thread? Couple of months ago, 2 months ago, I think that, yeah, at the end of August, I had a Zoom session with our Dharma brother, sister in Rome, in Anshinji, Doryu and Gyoetsu, because they needed some sort of support for Dharma names. And they were able, I know currently situation is getting worse and worse and worse in Europe, but there was a little moment this restriction was lifted. So therefore, they were able to conduct ordination ceremony and also precept ceremony. So there are quite large numbers of like a dozen of names we needed to go through. So at that time, I was showing this thread to them as well. They were like, whoa. But at the same time, they questioned, but do we really know the authenticity of this kesa? So what happens is, when this was presented from Ejo to Keizan, Gikai to Keizan, etc., etc., it actually comes with their own handwritten paper. So we actually get to see Ejo's handwriting and Gikai's handwriting saying, this is the robe which was sewn by Dogen, etc., etc. And then scholars actually proved scientifically those handwritten records are authentic. And it is now kept as a special, under the special law, as a historic, really important document. The thread is having a little bit, Kesa itself is having a little bit of a problem because they do not have exactly the same kind of fabric from exactly the same area of exactly the same time, which is mid 13th century, to compare it. But we do know this is old and comes back to probably around the 13th century. But we cannot say, yes, this is the fabric and this is come from Dogen's Kesa. And the Dogen's Kesa itself, when you open it up, there's a remnant, someone touched it. So therefore, let me do this. This portion is taken out. The string portion has been taken out, so there's no string. So therefore, you could see for a couple of generations, they were actually wearing it. But as the time goes on, it becomes more like a treasure to, revere. So I heard by the time of Daichi Zenji, Daichi felt really awkward not to open and wear it. And instead, he was basically keeping it in treasury. So there's a lot of speculation about the Kesa itself, but I think it is real. And most of the scholars feel it's okay to say it is real, but we don't have scientific last proof, so we can't really tell. I also got to see those, document. It's quite amazing. And I also have my personal, more doctrinal questions I have to raise to Hojo-san some other day. So I'm looking forward to that too. So anyway, for me, this is really a symbol of endurance of this teaching for the last, not only from Dogen, but also from Gautama Buddha, 2,500 years of, streamline that comes all the way to us and Sanshin. So.
So, in the areas where you were, is there kind of a broad understanding about the nature of, just what a treasure it is to have these Dogen artifacts? I mean,
Yeah.
beyond the Dogen family, beyond just so our immediate, because of course we understand it. But I guess I was not aware that the whole Myokoji area was such a hotbed of sort of Dogen history and Dogen studies in the area. So I just wonder, is there some broad understanding about the importance of that? Because it seems like you were sort of welcomed with open arms as a Sawaki descendant.
Mhm.
So I'm interested in how in the just the perception of that whole thing.
First of all, Dogen resurgence of the interest in Dogen among us has been 200 years ongoing, but also, regular folks as a regular reader who are not particularly familiar with details of Buddhist teaching started to catch up in Uchiyama Roshi's time. I think it is because Sawaki Roshi created a mass interest in Zazen. And Zazen basically came back to Japanese contemporary, culture. And then they discovered Dogen in that manner. So large chunk of our Dogen books are not written by appropriate, authentic teachers, but also it's written by, let's say, men of letters, men and women of letters. So it is most possible the first book you kind of randomly pick when you're like vaguely interested in Dogen. It may be written by a fictional author, etc., etc. So much so, it's basically pretty integrated interests among the people who are interested in religion, spirituality, culture, etc., etc. So that's one thing I really need to point out. So it's very different from the situation of Buddhist community in the United States. And another portion is, of course, what Dogen brought eventually, maybe out of context from time to time, but eventually gave a huge influence on how we behave and how we eat. Basically, Japanese table manner is based on oryogi, which was brought from Dogen, etc. So there are general interests. But of course, as this is always the conversation during Genzoe, there's a group of people within Soto school who didn't like Dogen's teaching ever since it was rediscovered in, like 18th century. And that stream of the group of people still, exist, including inside of the Soto Zen school. And many of those Buddhist priests are temple owners' son who just needed to become a priest, need to succeed the temple. So many of them are not particularly diligent in study. So those are a group of people kind of have this, what Hojo-san always talks about as an entanglement of two different types of teaching entangled into Japanese Soto school. That still exists, that group is. But at least, those people who come to Genzoe and come to seek for appropriate channel, Dogen teaching is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. And as a matter of fact, one of the students who gathered under Sawaki Roshi and Uchiyama Roshi is Shundo Aoyama. Aoyama Roshi is a woman, but she's regarded as nationwide in Japan as the leading Buddhist teacher of our time. She's 85, I think. She had 2 strokes a few years ago, and that took her, large portion of ambulatory skill away. So she needs a support to walk and etc. But she's very clear here, and she also, teaches quite vastly, like invited by AHE and Sojiji and Myokoji she's a Seido. So she's in, she doesn't live in Myokoji, but she has the position to come to Myokoji and then give lectures. So, and of course, Aoyama Roshi is probably one of the two top best-selling author. Interestingly, in how she writes about Buddhism catches attention for regular folks because she really writes very gently and very connectably with our daily life. So her book sells a lot. So therefore, through her, there are lots of interest in Dogen teaching as well. And when we host, we meaning Myokoji, host Aoyama Roshi's lecture series. This is usually 2 nights, 3 days lecture series, 4 times a year. Large number of the lay people come. And as you know, all of these lectures are offered for free in Japan. One time I was assigned as a Tenzo, and I really can't refuse a Tenzo job in Sanshin anymore because I learned so much, and I made more than 100 omusubi. So yes, I think those teachers are really, helpful for the people's understanding.
So could I just ask? I'm not sure how big a community Myokoji has. Is there a residential community at Myokoji that's practicing together? How big is that?
Myokoji is one of the 33 Senmon Sodos in Japan, under Soto school. And it was established in 15th century. The location changed twice. It's quite large. And it is also a functioning local temple as well. And it's supported by over 1,000 Danka families. So we are quite busy. And Danka family, I think you probably did this too as well, but in Eiheiji, when you sit through morning service, in the dedication portion, when some portion is dedicated to the major, supporters, the first name they use is Tokugawa family. That's the samurai clan family. Next name is Matsudaira family. Matsudaira family is the arbitrary lineage of Tokugawa family. So this is samurai clan, right? The third name is Ota family. Ota family was the major merchant in Kyushu Island because Kyushu Island was the only area where it was open to like China, Korea, and eventually, Portugal and Spain and etc., etc. So therefore, this is the area lots of merchants created a huge fortune, and at the same time, they are very much interested in Buddhism. So therefore, those 3 families traditionally supported Dogen's temples, and Myokoji is created basically by Ota family. So every morning during the choka, that's the name we have to recite about, long generation after generation of a great support of all the family, etc., as a dedication. So yeah, it's a very active place. And also many of those supervisory positions, priests have their own temples in the mountains, and many of them are farmers. And also as Kyushu being haunted by natural disaster, particularly recently with floods and typhoons and etc., etc., we send quite large numbers of volunteers to those areas that was destroyed by flood and etc. And one of the supervisory position, younger priest of 40-something years old, he's also a graduate from the same university I graduated from. So we create some sort of inner circle. He is currently going through 108 plants of cherry trees on the area destroyed by landslide, and they want to make it into more sustainable afterward. So we did planting as well and farming as well. And also because of the fact of this Sawaki, Uchiyama, and now Aoyama Roshi's frequent visit, many people actually call us just so, when I'm now in a hospital, and then I have just received a very bad diagnosis, and what do you think? That kind of thing. So temple is very connected with the society, community in general. And we have a frequent visitors. Oh, once we had a visitor who was a Yakuza. Yes, and I functioned as a jisha for Honda Roshi. I think because of my age, it's connectable for Honda Roshi than younger folks. So I didn't know what to do. And then this Yakuza man insisted, Yakuza is a Japanese equivalent of mafia. But fortunately, this is a much lower class of person and who didn't have money. So what he was doing is he was demanding money from the temple. So Honda Roshi said, it's okay, usher him in. So I was really worried, but I ushered him into, Hojo's room. And I was standing outside of the Hojo's rooms. Well, it's not a door, it's a Noren fabric, but outside, so I can hear what's going on. And Honda Roshi started to scold him. He's usually a very gentle person, but in this time, he was kind of imitating Sawaki Roshi's voice. Why the hell, young man like you, who has 2 arms and 2 legs, can't work? You should work. Look at me. I'm a frail 84-year-old man, but I still wake up at 3:30 in the morning, etc. And then he was like, oh. Towards the end. And of course, toward the end, he gave a little bit of money. But he was scolding him. Why on earth you come to the place? You should be the one who donates something to us. Why am I giving you the money? But he basically said, go out and have something to eat and think it through, get a job. So there are a whole variation of the visitors to come. It's a very interesting place. Oh, also, it's also quite international because Honda Roshi had a student through Tom Wright, the earlier collaborator of translation with Hojo-san. Tom also stayed in Myokoji for a while. So I also saw the remnants of Tom's, all of those morning recitation is alphabetized so that he can look at the alphabet. So anyway, Tom brings lots of people from Europe as well. So I met a student from Poland, Italy, oh, I forgot. But also we have a student from Taiwan and also Korea as well. So there are some, people whose Japanese is not the original native language as well. So it's a very interesting place. Yes, please.
Go ahead.
You have to unmute yourself. Yes. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Hello.
First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really interesting and it gave me chills to see those items. Thank you. I was just wondering, have any of Oyama Roshi's works been translated into English?
I think Hoko or Doju may be able to answer that question. Hoko, do you know?
Yeah, her little book called Zen Seeds is available in English. I suspect there's some other things floating around that others might know about. It looks like Doju's probably got a copy of it. Looked like he was reaching for one. Yeah, that one's around, and I suspect there are other interviews and things that either have been translated into English or transcribed or something like that. But that little book alone, I know is available. And she is quite readable, very lovely, very inspiring, but in a practical way. So, Issan is right when he says her things are worth reading because they're not lightweight, but they're quite approachable.
Yeah, I do have a copy of it somewhere. I think it's on the other shelf, but it is very good. I would recommend it. And also our Dharma sister, Jisho, has been working on translating some of her other Japanese books, and I helped her a little bit with that. I'm not sure if she's still working on it now, but she has a lot of other material that hasn't been translated. So
great. And Jisho now lives with Aoyama Roshi in her original temple. So one thing, my favorite book is a flower book by Aoyama Roshi. And you have a copy in the library of Sanshinji. If when time comes, you can actually go to Sanshinji's library. And it's not translated into English, but it has been in French. And our Italian friends are trying to publish it as well. And Misaki and I actually helped for the presentation, 4-chapter example presentation as well. But this time I really saw the different face of Aoyama Roshi, which is very academically trained. You know, she used to work for the research center for graduate school of Komazawa University. So she's also quite academically trained. Now she has embarked on our side of commentary on Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity, 100 koans. And it really gave me a huge impact. So I also received 60 lecture, recording of her lectures of Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity. And again, I haven't really touched it yet, but it really clearly shows the difference between how Dogen approaches koan vis-a-vis other side of Zen approaches koan. And it gives a word-by-word explanation and guide you to a really clarifying place. And it really helps us to read Dogen when Dogen quotes those koans. So I really saw very strict and academic, very precise portion of Aoyama Roshi's teaching as well this time. So she's quite amazing. I hope she has a longevity at this point. She's quite physically frail. But thank you. I really miss you guys.
We miss you.
Thank you.
Issan, could you tell us how everybody's doing, how your Sangha is doing?
Okay. So here's the thing. We have a small group of people who are really devoted themselves into, Zazen in Uchiyama Roshi's style and the Dogen study. And so we actually identify ourselves as a satellite of Sanshinji. And New York City is situated in the way that you really have to travel with the subways and buses, even if you're living in the same city. It's a quite, traffic you have to deal with. So even before pre-COVID, I always made it available through Zoom for the people who can't really travel to my place or Catherine's place. And, we don't really own a place, have a place. So therefore, for like a study group, I open up my little living room. And Catherine, you probably remember Catherine, is doing very well. And she converted her semi-ground floor. It's an old brownstone Brooklyn building. So it's a step down, but it's a ground floor, entirely into Zendo-like structure. So we were meeting there for all day, sitting, etc., etc. Now, currently, everything is online, but it's okay because we're kind of familiar with meeting online. And it seems as if this challenging time is functioning almost like a screening time. So in another word, some people, their practice completely fall apart and they don't come. But interesting, you see some people really growing and utilizing this time staying home so much as a really blessing time so that you can focus on like studying and reading sutras and etc. etc. Same as myself. It's a little difficult because both Paul, my husband, and myself have lived our entire life traveling. So for both of us, this is the longest time ever, entire life of our lives. We didn't go to the airport, in another word. So we frequently travel. But at the same time, this was a wonderful time for me to be able to focus on what I really couldn't really find the time. So, I've been spending lots of time in detailed examination of Shobo Genzo and also Shoyoroku, because my interest in 100 koan in Shoyoroku was revised by meeting Aoyama Roshi in Japan. So for the first time in my life, I read through and examined those 100 koans twice already in the last 7 months of staying home, shelter in home. So, we can always find something, wholesome and helpful in any time.
Mm.
So that's the attitude we are taking.
Good attitude.
Thank you. And how are you doing? It's very interesting, when you are away from America, something really odd hits me and I get so homesick. And I usually, what I'm homesick for is usually peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which is very hard to get outside of the United States, and also bagel with cream cheese. But this time I started to get very homesick and I caught myself home, meaning Sanshin. It's very interesting because I have several homes, so to speak, as I travel around. But in Myokoji, I started to wake up and feeling, if this is in Myokoji, I step down and cross that little footstep, and I open the door and I go down, and that's the Zendo, etc., etc. There's this visceral feeling in being in Sanshinji. I missed touching moss garden. I missed weeding and all that.
This is you, actually.
Yeah, the moss garden needs some attention. You should
It
come
should.
back soon.
That's something I can look forward to.
Good, good. Yeah. Well, we have your shusho coming up, hopefully soon. Hopefully, you're still able to do that at some point. Are you planning on it?
Yes, and at the same time, as I cannot go anywhere, but Japan actually is able to control as much so that temple activities back normal.
Yeah.
So therefore, Myokoji is asking me, why don't you come back and stay here until Sanshinji reopens? So I think I might do that as of January, and I'll wait for you to tell me to come back.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question or comment for Reverend Koyama? Shall we close?
Thank you.